The rain fell in heavy sheets across the colony world of Vareth 7, turning the already muddy streets of the mining settlement into rivers of brown sludge. Kira Vance stood outside the small communications hub, her thin jacket soaked through to her skin, her dark hair plastered against her face. She held the rejection letter in her trembling hands, reading the words for the 5th time as if they might somehow change. "We regret to inform you that your application to the Galactic Naval Academy has been denied. While your test scores demonstrate exceptional aptitude, your background does not meet the minimum requirements for admission. The Academy requires all candidates to have completed certified secondary education at an accredited institution. Mining colony apprenticeship programs do not qualify under current regulations. We encourage you to pursue other opportunities suited to your circumstances." The words blurred as rainwater mixed with the tears she refused to acknowledge. 22 years of dreaming, of studying every navigation manual she could find in the colony's tiny library, of memorizing star charts by the light of her father's old datapad, of teaching herself advanced mathematics while other children played in the dust. All of it meant nothing because she had been born on the wrong world, to the wrong family, in the wrong circumstances. Kara's mother had died when she was 6, caught in a tunnel collapse that had killed 17 miners. Her father had raised her alone, working double shifts in the lithium mines to keep food on their table and a roof over their heads. There had been no money for proper schooling. There had barely been money for anything at all. But Kara had always looked up at the stars. Even as a child, she had known that her destiny was not in the darkness of the mines. She had watched the cargo ships come and go, carrying raw materials to the core worlds and bringing back supplies. She had memorized the names of every captain, every vessel, every route. She had dreamed of the day when she would stand on the bridge of her own ship, commanding a crew, exploring the unknown reaches of space. That dream was now officially dead. She crumpled the letter in her fist and threw it into the mud. What was the point of being smart if the system would never give her a chance? What was the point of having dreams if they were denied before they could even begin? "That looked like bad news," a voice said from behind her. Kara turned to find an old man standing under the overhang of the communications hub. He was thin and weathered, with gray hair that reached his shoulders and a beard that had seen better days. His clothes were worn but clean, and there was something in his eyes that spoke of distances traveled and things seen that most people could only imagine. "It's none of your business," Kara said, her voice sharper than she intended. The old man shrugged and pulled out a pipe, which he lit with practiced ease. The smoke curled up into the rain and disappeared. "Fair enough. But I've been watching you for the past hour, standing there reading that letter over and over. Whatever it says, it's eating you alive." Kara wanted to tell him to go away, to leave her alone with her shattered dreams. But something about his presence was oddly comforting. He didn't look at her with pity, the way most adults on the colony did when they saw a young person struggling. He looked at her with something closer to curiosity. "I applied to the Naval Academy," she said finally. "They rejected me. Not because I'm not smart enough. Because I grew up here, on this rock, with no proper education. It doesn't matter that I scored in the top percentile on every test they gave me. It doesn't matter that I know more about astronavigation than half the cadets they'll accept. I'm just a miner's daughter, and that's all I'll ever be." The old man nodded slowly, drawing on his pipe. "The Academy," he said, as if tasting the word. "Prestigious institution. Produces some fine officers. Also produces some of the most arrogant, narrow-minded commanders I've ever had the misfortune to encounter." Kara blinked. "You've dealt with Academy graduates?" "I've dealt with a lot of people over the years. The ones with the fancy credentials aren't always the ones you want beside you when things go wrong." He studied her for a long moment. "What's your name, girl?" "Kira. Kira Vance." "Well, Kira Vance, let me ask you something. If the Academy had accepted you, what would you have done with your life?" The question caught her off guard. She had thought about it so many times that the answer came automatically. "I would have become a navigator. The best navigator in the fleet. I would have charted new routes through unexplored space, found faster paths between systems, maybe even discovered new worlds.
And, now that they've rejected you? Kira felt the anger rise in her chest. Now I'll spend the rest of my life in the mines, just like my father. Just like everyone else on this colony. I'll dig lithium out of the ground until I'm too old or too broken to work, and then, I'll die here, having never seen anything beyond this miserable rock.
The old man was silent for a long moment. Then, he knocked the ash from his pipe and tucked it away.
My name is Marcus Chin.
I captain a ship called the Wandering Star.
We're not military, not corporate. We're what you might call independent operators. We haul cargo, sometimes passengers, occasionally take on jobs that require a certain flexibility.
We're always looking for crew members who have skills and ambition but lack the opportunities to use them. Kira felt her heart skip.
You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance, Marcus corrected. It won't be easy.
The pay is irregular, the work is hard, and the dangers are real. But you'll learn things out there that no academy could ever teach you. And if you're as smart as you claim to be, you might just make something of yourself. For a moment, Kira could only stare at him. This stranger had appeared out of nowhere, offering her exactly what she had dreamed of her entire life. It seemed too good to be true. It probably was too good to be true.
Why me? She asked. You don't know anything about me.
Marcus smiled, and, for the first time, Kira saw warmth in his weathered face. I know you stood in the rain for an hour, reading a rejection letter, because you couldn't accept that your dreams were over. I know you're angry at a system that judges people by their circumstances rather than their abilities. I know you have fire in you, Kira Vance. The kind of fire that doesn't go out easily. Those are the qualities I look for in my crew. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card with coordinates printed on it.
We're docked at landing pad 7. We leave at dawn. If you're there, you're welcome aboard. If you're not, I wish you well.
He pressed the card into her hand and turned to walk away.
Wait, Kara called out. What if I'm making a mistake? What if this is a trap, or a scam, or something worse?
Marcus paused and looked back at her. Then, you'll have learned a valuable lesson about trusting strangers. But, ask yourself this, what have you got to lose?
The life waiting for you here? The future they've already decided you don't deserve?
He shrugged. Sometimes the biggest risk is taking no risk at all. Then, he was gone, disappearing into the rain and the darkness. Kara stood there for a long time, the card clutched in her hand, her mind racing. Everything she had ever known was on this colony. Her father, her few friends, the graves of her mother and grandparents. Leaving would mean abandoning all of it, stepping into a universe she had only ever dreamed about.
But staying would mean giving up.
And Kira Vance had never been good at giving up. She went home that night and told her father everything. Jonas Vance was a large man, his hands calloused from decades of mining work, his face lined with the kind of exhaustion that never fully went away. He listened in silence as Kira explained about the rejection letter, about the strange old captain, about the offer to join the crew of the Wandering Star. When she finished, her father was quiet for a long time. Then, he stood up and crossed to the small cabinet where he kept his few precious possessions. He pulled out a worn leather case and handed it to her. This belonged to your mother, he said, his voice rough with emotion. It's a navigation compass.
Real one, not digital.
She brought it with her when she came to this colony, before she met me, before you were born. She always said it had brought her luck. Kira opened the case and found a beautiful brass compass inside, its surface polished by years of use. She could hardly believe her eyes.
Father, I can't take this. You can, and you will. Jonas put his heavy hand on her shoulder. Your mother would have wanted you to have it.
She would have wanted you to chase your dreams, Kira. That's what she did when she was young.
That's why she ended up here, on this rock, meeting me.
She never regretted it, even at the end. She always said the only real failure is the failure to try.
Kara felt the tears she had been holding back all day finally spill over. She hugged her father tightly, knowing that this might be the last time she ever saw him. The universe was vast, and the chances of returning to a remote mining colony were slim. "I'll make you proud," she whispered. "You already have," he replied. "Now go make yourself proud." The next morning, Kara stood at landing pad 7 with a small bag containing everything she owned. The Wandering Star was not an impressive vessel. It was old, its hull scarred by years of travel, its engine showing signs of heavy use. But it was a ship, a real starship, and it was her ticket to the stars. Marcus Chen was waiting for her at the boarding ramp. He nodded once, a simple acknowledgement that required no words, and let her inside. The interior of the ship was cramped but functional. Kara would learn later that it had been a military transport decades ago, decommissioned and sold to private owners after the last major conflict. Marcus had bought it cheap and spent years modifying it to suit his needs. It wasn't pretty, but it was solid and reliable. The crew was small, just 5 people including Marcus. There was Elena, a tall woman with short red hair who served as the ship's engineer. She had lost an arm in an accident years ago and replaced it with a mechanical prosthetic that she had built herself. There was Tomas, a young man not much older than Kara who handled communications and sensors. He had a nervous energy about him, always tapping his fingers or bouncing his leg, but his skills were undeniable. There was Gene, a massive man who served as security and cargo handler. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened. And there was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the ship's medic and scientist, a gentle woman who always seemed to be lost in thought. Marcus introduced Kira to each of them, and they accepted her without question. She would learn later that every member of the crew had a similar story. None of them had been given opportunities by the system. All of them had found their own way to the stars. For the first few months, Kira served as a general assistant, doing whatever jobs needed doing. She cleaned corridors, organized cargo, helped Elena with maintenance, learned the ship's systems from Tomas. She absorbed everything like a sponge, asking endless questions, practicing skills whenever she had free time. Marcus watched her progress with quiet approval. One evening, he called her to the bridge and sat her down at the navigation console. "Show me what you know," he said. Kara's hands trembled slightly as she activated the console. But the moment she began working with the star charts and navigation systems, her nervousness faded. This was what she had been born to do. She plotted courses, calculated fuel consumption, identified potential hazards, suggested alternative routes. She worked for hours, completely absorbed in the task, barely noticing when Marcus brought her food and water. When she finally finished, she looked up to find the entire crew watching her. There was genuine surprise on their faces, even respect. "Well," Elena said, breaking the silence, "I think we found our new navigator." From that day forward, Kara sat at the navigation console. She wasn't officially given the title, but everyone knew she had earned the position. The routes she plotted saved fuel and time. The hazards she identified kept the ship safe. Her instincts for space travel were almost supernatural, as if she could feel the currents of gravity and the flow of solar winds. The Wandering Star traveled from system to system, taking whatever jobs they could find. They hauled cargo to remote outposts. They transported passengers who needed to travel discreetly. They occasionally did work for various factions, always staying neutral, always keeping their heads down. It was not the glorious military career Kara had once imagined, but it was real, and it was hers. A year passed, then, 2. Kara grew from an inexperienced girl into a confident young woman. She learned the unwritten rules of the spaceways, the politics of the various systems, the dangers that lurked in the dark spaces between stars. She made mistakes, some of them costly, but she learned from each one. Then came the day that would change everything. The Wandering Star was in the Kepler system, a busy hub of commercial traffic, when they received a distress signal. It was coming from a passenger liner called the Celestial Hope, carrying over 3,000 civilians from the outer colonies to the core worlds. The ship had suffered a catastrophic engine failure and
was drifting toward a radiation belt that would kill everyone aboard within hours. The nearest military vessel is 6 hours away, Tomas reported, his face pale.
The Celestial Hope has maybe 3 hours before they hit the radiation zone. Marcus looked at Kira. Can we reach them?
Kira was already working at her console, her fingers flying over the controls.
The problem was incredibly complex.
The radiation belt created interference that made standard navigation impossible.
The passenger liner was too large to tow with their engines. Any approach would have to be precisely calculated to avoid destroying both ships.
We can reach them, she said finally. But, to get them out, we'll need to use their own momentum. If we can attach grappling lines and fire our engines at exactly the right angle, we can redirect their trajectory just enough to skim the edge of the radiation zone instead of going through it.
That's insane, Elena said. The calculations would have to be perfect.
One mistake and we all die. I can do it, Kira said, and there was no hesitation in her voice.
I've been running simulations of similar scenarios for months. I know I can do it.
Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then, he nodded.
Do it. What followed was the most intense 3 hours of Kira's life.
She guided the wandering star through the interference field, making micro-adjustments to their course dozens of times per minute. She coordinated with the Celestial Hope's crew, giving them precise instructions on how to position their ship for the grappling connection. She calculated and recalculated the engine burn, accounting for every variable, every possible error. The moment of truth came when both ships were connected and the engines fired. For 30 seconds that felt like hours, Kira held her breath, watching the numbers scroll across her screen. The trajectory shifted, slowly at first, then, more dramatically. The edge of the radiation zone passed within meters of the Celestial Hope's hull, close enough to fry external sensors, but not close enough to penetrate the shields.
They had done it.
The passengers were saved. When the military rescue vessels finally arrived, they found the wandering star still attached to the Celestial Hope, both ships safely clear of the danger zone. The captain of the lead military vessel demanded to know how a small independent freighter had accomplished what should have been impossible. Marcus simply smiled and pointed at Kira.
Ask our navigator.
The incident made news across the system. A young woman with no formal training, no academy credentials, had saved over 3,000 lives through pure skill and courage.
The story spread quickly, and Kira Vance became a name that people recognized.
But the recognition brought complications. The Galactic Naval Academy, embarrassed by the publicity, released a statement claiming that Kira's success was due to luck rather than skill, and that proper academy training would have produced even better results.
Some military officers echoed this sentiment, dismissing the achievement as a fluke. Kira didn't care about the politics.
She had proven something to herself that day.
She didn't need the Academy's approval. She didn't need anyone's approval.
She had skills that mattered, skills that saved lives, and no amount of institutional snobbery could take that away from her. The wandering star continued its travels, but things were different now. Other ships began requesting Kira's help with difficult navigation problems. Captains who had never heard of her before started asking Marcus if his navigator was available for consultations. The young woman who had been rejected by the Academy was becoming something of a legend in the independent shipping community. Then came the message that would set the next chapter of Kira's life in motion. It arrived encrypted, on a channel that only military vessels were supposed to use.
The sender was Admiral Helena Vasquez, one of the highest-ranking officers in the Galactic Navy.
The message was simple but urgent.
I need to meet with Kira Vance. The future of humanity may depend on it. Admiral Helena Vasquez was not what Kira had expected.
The woman who greeted her aboard the military cruiser Invincible was small and compact, with silver hair-cut military short and eyes that seemed to look straight through you. She wore her uniform with an ease that spoke of decades of service, and her handshake was firm without being aggressive. "Thank you for coming," the Admiral said, leading Kira into a private conference room. "I know you have no reason to trust the military, given how the Academy treated you. But what I'm about to tell you is too important for old grudges. Kara sat down across from her, keeping her expression neutral. The message mentioned the future of humanity.
That's a big claim. It's an accurate claim.
Vasquez activated a holographic display that filled the center of the table. 3 months ago, one of our deep space probes detected an anomaly at the edge of known space. We sent a research vessel to investigate.
What they found changes everything we thought we knew about the universe. The display showed a massive structure, unlike anything Kara had ever seen.
It was a ring, thousands of kilometers in diameter, floating in the void between stars. Its surface was covered in patterns and symbols that looked almost like writing, though no known language matched them.
We call it the Gateway, Vasquez continued.
Our scientists believe it's a portal of some kind, built by an intelligence far more advanced than our own.
Preliminary tests suggest it leads to another galaxy entirely, perhaps further.
Kara stared at the image, her mind racing.
A portal to another galaxy. The implications were staggering.
Humanity had spent centuries expanding through their own galaxy, colonizing thousands of worlds, building a civilization that spanned light years.
But they had always been alone.
No evidence of other intelligent life had ever been found, despite endless searching.
You think there's someone on the other side, she said. We know there is. Vasquez changed the display to show a series of signals, complex waveforms that pulsed with mathematical precision.
These transmissions have been coming through the gateway for the past 2 months.
They're not natural phenomena. They're communications, though we haven't been able to decode them yet. Whoever built the gateway is trying to contact us. Kira leaned back in her chair, trying to process what she was hearing. This is incredible. But what does it have to do with me? Vasquez's expression grew serious.
The gateway is located in a region of space that is almost impossible to navigate. The gravitational anomalies, the radiation fields, the debris from ancient stellar collisions, it's a navigational nightmare.
We've sent 3 expeditions to reach it.
2 were forced to turn back. The 3rd never returned. The weight of those words settled over the room.
An entire expedition lost in the void.
Ships, crews, families who would never know what happened to their loved ones.
We need the best navigator in human space, Vasquez continued.
According to every analysis we've done, every simulation we've run, that person is you, Kara Vance. Your work on the Celestial Hope Rescue was reviewed by our top navigators. They concluded that what you did should have been impossible. You don't just calculate routes, you feel them. You have an intuition for space that we've never seen before. Kira felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride at being recognized, yes. But also anger at the system that had rejected her, now coming to her for help. And, beneath it all, a thrill of excitement at the thought of exploring something truly unknown. The Academy rejected me, she said, her voice carefully controlled. Your institutions decided I wasn't good enough. Now you need me? Vasquez nodded, not flinching from the accusation. The Academy was wrong. The system was wrong. I'm not here to defend decisions I had no part in making. I'm here because humanity faces a choice that may define our future, and we need your help to make it. There was a long silence. Kira thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The rejection letter in the rain. Marcus Chan's offer. The years of learning and growing aboard the Wandering Star. The rescue that had made her name known across the system. I want my crew with me, she said finally. The Wandering Star and everyone on it. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it with people I trust. Agreed. Your ship will be attached to the expedition fleet as a support vessel, and your crew will have full access to all resources. And, when this is over, whatever happens, the Academy changes its admission policies. No more rejecting qualified candidates based on where they were born or how they were educated. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. That's not something I can promise unilaterally. Then, find someone who can. This is my condition, Admiral. I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing it for every kid on every mining colony who dreams of something more. If you want my help, you'll make it happen. For the first time since they had met, Vasquez smiled. "You remind me of myself when I was young. Full of fire and principle. I'll make the calls. You have my word." They shook hands, and the deal was sealed. The expedition was assembled over the following weeks. It consisted of 5 military vessels, 2 science ships, and a support fleet that included the Wandering Star. Kira was given an official position as chief navigator of the entire fleet, a title that caused considerable controversy among the academy-trained officers who had expected one of their own to hold the position. The criticism was loud and persistent. Kara was called a fraud, a lucky amateur, a publicity stunt. Anonymous messages accused her of sleeping her way into the position. Official complaints were filed, demanding that she be replaced by someone with proper credentials. Kira ignored all of it. She had work to do. The region around the gateway was indeed a navigational nightmare. Kira spent days studying the charts, running simulations, developing new approaches to the challenges they would face. She worked with Marcus and her crew, combining their practical experience with the military's advanced equipment and data. The breakthrough came when she stopped thinking like a traditional navigator. The conventional approach was to find the safest path through the obstacles. But there was no safe path. Every route led through danger. The key was not avoiding the hazards but using them. The gravitational anomalies create currents, she explained to the assembled commanders. Like rivers in space. If we fight against them, we'll be torn apart. But if we ride them, they can carry us where we need to go. It's like sailing, not like flying. The military officers were skeptical. This was not how navigation was taught at the academy. It went against everything they had learned. But Admiral Vasquez overruled their objections and ordered the fleet to follow Kara's plan. The journey to the gateway took 17 days. 17 days of constant tension, of minute adjustments to course and speed, of trusting in calculations that seemed to defy logic. Kara barely slept, spending most of her time at the navigation console, feeling the flow of space around them, making decisions by instinct as much as by data. There were close calls. A gravitational surge that nearly crushed one of the science ships. A radiation burst that overwhelmed the shields of a military escort. A debris field that appeared out of nowhere, forcing a desperate maneuver that Kira plotted in seconds. Each crisis was overcome, and each success strengthened the fleet's confidence in their unconventional navigator. When they finally emerged from the hazard zone and saw the gateway with their own eyes, even the most skeptical officers fell silent. It was vast beyond imagination. The ring floated in perfect stillness, its surface glowing with a soft light that seemed to come from within. The patterns on its surface were even more intricate than the images had shown, covering every inch of the massive structure in designs that looked simultaneously ancient and impossibly advanced. "It's beautiful," Kira whispered, and no one disagreed. The scientists went to work immediately, setting up equipment, taking readings, analyzing the transmissions that continued to pulse through the gateway. The military vessels took up defensive positions, wary of unknown threats. And Kira studied the gateway itself, trying to understand its purpose and its secrets. Days passed. The scientists made progress, slowly deciphering elements of the transmissions. They confirmed what had been suspected. The signals were an invitation. Someone on the other side wanted to make contact. They were waiting. The debate over what to do next was fierce. Some argued for caution, for waiting until they understood more. Others pushed for immediate action, eager to meet whoever had sent the invitation. The politicians back home demanded answers while providing no guidance. The military wanted to establish a defensive perimeter before any contact was made. In the end, it was a decision made for them. Without warning, the gateway activated. The soft glow intensified, becoming a blinding light that filled the space around them. The ring began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, creating a vortex of energy at its center. Through that vortex, something began to emerge. The first alien ship was small by comparison, perhaps the size of a military cruiser. But its design was unlike anything human engineers had ever conceived. It seemed to flow rather than fly, its hull shifting and changing as it moved, as if it were alive. Behind it came others, a dozen, then 100, then more than Kara could count. "All ships, hold position," Admiral Vasquez commanded, her voice steady despite the unprecedented situation. "Do not fire unless fired upon. This is a first contact scenario. We must proceed with caution." Kara watched the alien fleet approach, her heart pounding. Everything she had experienced, everything she had learned, had led to this moment. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. The question was whether that was a blessing or a curse. The lead alien ship stopped at a distance of approximately 100 kilometers. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, a transmission came through, on all frequencies simultaneously, in every language known to humanity. "We have waited long for this day. We are the architects. We built the gateway as an invitation, a test. Only a civilization capable of reaching it would be worthy of our attention. You have proven yourselves. Now we must determine if you are ready for what comes next." The voice was strange, neither male nor female, neither human nor machine. It seemed to resonate in the mind as much as in the ears, carrying meanings that went beyond mere words. Admiral Vasquez stepped forward to the communications panel. "We are humanity. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship. What test do you speak of? The test is not yet complete. Reaching the gateway was only the first part. To prove your worth, you must navigate the path. It is a journey through spaces that few civilizations have survived. Only those who complete it are granted access to the knowledge of the architects." A new image appeared on every screen in the fleet. It showed a route through the gateway, into a realm of impossible geometries and terrifying beauty. Stars that burned in colors that had no names. Nebulae that seemed to reach out with living tendrils. Black holes that danced in pairs and groups, their gravitational pull creating patterns that defied understanding. "This is the path," the voice continued. "It must be traveled in a single vessel, with a single navigator. The journey will test everything you are. If you succeed, all of humanity will benefit from our knowledge. If you fail, you will be lost forever, and we will wait for another civilization to rise." The transmission ended, leaving the fleet in stunned silence. The arguments that followed were predictable. The military officers insisted that the expedition should return home and consult with political leaders. The scientists begged for more time to study the situation. Some even suggested that the whole thing was a trap, designed to lure humanity's best and brightest into destruction. But Kara was already studying the image of the path, her mind working through the challenges it presented. It was beyond anything she had ever attempted. The gravitational forces alone would require calculations more complex than anything in human experience. The energy fields would scramble conventional sensors. The time distortions would make coordinated navigation impossible. And, yet, as she stared at the swirling chaos of the path, she felt something she had not expected. She felt ready. "I'll do it," she said, her voice cutting through the debate. "I'll navigate the path." Every eye in the room turned to her. Admiral Vasquez spoke first. "Kira, this is suicide. No one could navigate through that. Then, humanity fails the test, and we never learn what the architects have to offer. Is that what you want?" Kira stood her ground, her expression determined. "I've spent my whole life being told what I can't do. I was too poor for proper education. Too obscure for the academy. Too inexperienced for real responsibility. Every time, I proved them wrong. This is no different." "This is completely different," Marcus said, his voice heavy with concern. "Kira, I've watched you grow into one of the best navigators I've ever seen. But, this is beyond human capability. The path isn't just difficult. It's designed to be impossible." "Maybe," Kira admitted. "But, impossible is just a word people use when they're afraid to try. I've been impossible my whole life. And, I'm still here." The silence that followed was profound. Then, slowly, the crew of the Wandering Star stepped forward to stand beside her. Elena, with her mechanical arm and her fierce loyalty.
Tomas, nervous but unwavering.
Jean, silent as always, his presence a statement of support. Dr. Tanaka, her eyes filled with tears but her spine straight. If she goes, we go, Elena said simply. That's how this works.
Admiral Vasquez looked at the small group of misfits and outcasts who had somehow become the most important people in human history.
She saw the determination in their faces, the bonds that held them together, the courage that no academy could teach. Very well, she said finally. Prepare the Wandering Star for the path. May whatever gods exist watch over you. The preparation took 3 days. The ship was equipped with every piece of technology that might help, sensors and shielding and emergency systems. Kira spent hours in communication with the architects, learning what she could about the challenges ahead. The aliens were surprisingly forthcoming, explaining the nature of each obstacle without revealing how to overcome it. The path is not meant to be passed through force or technology, the architect voice explained. It is meant to reveal the truth of your nature. Those who rely on machines will fail. Only those who trust in themselves will succeed. On the final night before departure, Kira sat alone on the bridge of the Wandering Star. The gateway loomed outside the viewport, beautiful and terrible, a door to the unknown. She held her mother's compass in her hand, feeling its familiar weight. I wish you could see this, Mom, she whispered. I wish you could know how far I've come. There was no response, of course.
But, somehow, Kira felt less alone than she had in years.
Marcus found her there as the artificial dawn began to brighten the ship's interior. He sat down beside her without speaking, and they watched the gateway together in companionable silence. Are you scared? He asked finally.
Terrified, Kira admitted. But, I'd been scared before.
When I was standing in the rain, reading that rejection letter.
When I first came aboard this ship. When we were trying to save the celestial hope. Being scared doesn't mean you don't do something. It just means you're paying attention.
Marcus smiled, the same warm smile he had given her on that first day.
You've come a long way from that angry girl in the mining colony.
She's still in here, Kira said, touching her chest.
She reminds me why I fight.
They embraced, not as captain and crew member, but as father and daughter in every way that mattered.
Then, it was time to go. The Wandering Star detached from the fleet and moved toward the gateway.
Behind them, the assembled ships of humanity watched in silence.
Ahead of them, the unknown waited.
As they crossed the threshold of the gateway, the universe changed. Colors shifted, space bent, time seemed to flow in multiple directions at once. Kira felt her mind expanding, struggling to comprehend the new reality around her.
The path had begun.
The first sensation was of falling, though there was no direction to fall in. The Wandering Star tumbled through a space that had no up or down, no left or right, no before or after. Kira gripped her console as reality itself seemed to come apart around her. Everyone hold on, she shouted, though her voice sounded strange in this place, stretched and compressed at the same time.
I'm trying to stabilize us. Her instruments were useless. The sensors showed conflicting readings, impossible data that made no logical sense. But, Kara had learned long ago not to rely solely on instruments.
She closed her eyes and reached out with that other sense, the one she had never been able to explain, the intuition that let her feel the currents of space. There was something there, beneath the chaos. A pattern, hidden and subtle, like the melody of a song buried under static.
Kara focused on it, letting everything else fade away.
The fear, the confusion, the screaming of the ship's warning systems, all of it became background noise as she searched for that hidden rhythm.
She found it.
Her hands moved on the controls, not following any calculated course but guided by pure instinct. The ship's tumbling slowed, then stopped. The chaos outside the viewports began to make a kind of sense, not the logical sense of normal space but a deeper sense, like understanding the flow of water or the movement of wind.
How are you doing that? Tomas asked, his voice shaking. I don't know, Kira admitted. But, don't distract me. The first stage of the path was a maze of folded space. Normal navigation would have been impossible, but Kira didn't try to navigate normally. She let herself feel the way the space wanted to flow, like a leaf floating on a stream. Where the currents led, she followed. Where they split, she chose by instinct alone. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes, or perhaps days. Time had no meaning here. The crew worked in shifts, but Kira never left the navigation console. She couldn't. The moment she stopped feeling the currents, they would be lost forever. Elena kept the engines running despite damage that should have been fatal. Tomas monitored communications, though nothing came through but static and strange whispers. Jean stood ready at the weapons console, prepared to fight even though no weapons could work in this place. Dr. Tanaka tended to the minor injuries the crew sustained and watched for signs of psychological breakdown. Through it all, Marcus watched Kira with growing amazement. He had known she was talented. He had not known she was this talented. She was doing something that no human had ever done before, navigating through dimensions that shouldn't exist, finding paths that couldn't be calculated. The second stage was worse. They emerged from the folded space into a region dominated by living energy fields. Great clouds of luminous matter drifted through the void, beautiful and deadly. Where the clouds touched, reality warped and changed. A ship caught in their embrace would be transformed into something unrecognizable. Kira plotted a course that wove between the clouds, sometimes missing them by meters. The ship shook with every near miss, the hull groaning under stresses it was never designed to withstand. But Kira's hands were steady on the controls, her eyes focused on something beyond the physical. "There's something alive in those clouds, Dr. Tanaka said, studying her readings. "Not alive like us. Something stranger. Something that thinks in ways we can't understand." "I know," Kira replied. "They're curious about us. They're not hostile, just confused. We're probably the first physical beings they've ever encountered." "How can you possibly know that?" Kira didn't answer. She didn't know how she knew. She just did. The third stage nearly killed them. It was a region of time distortion, where past and future existed simultaneously. Kira saw herself as a child, standing in the rain with a rejection letter. She saw herself as an old woman, sitting in a chair, looking out at stars she had never seen. She saw herself dead, floating in the void, the ship destroyed around her. "Focus," she told herself, gripping the edge of the console until her knuckles turned white. The past is gone. The future isn't written. Only now matters. But the visions continued, and not all of them were hers. She saw Elena's past, the accident that had taken her arm, the years of struggling to rebuild herself. She saw Tomas's future, a family, children, a peaceful life on a green world. She saw Jin's secret pain, the loss he had never spoken of, the reason he rarely smiled. She saw Dr. Tanaka's dreams, the research that would save millions, the recognition that would come too late. And she saw Marcus. She saw the life he had lived before becoming a captain, the choices he had made, the regrets he carried. She saw why he had offered her a chance that day in the rain. She saw the daughter he had lost, years before, a girl who had reminded him of Kira, a girl who had died because no one had believed in her. Tears streamed down Kira's face as she navigated through the temporal storm. The visions threatened to overwhelm her, to drown her in memories and possibilities. But she held on, focusing on the moment, on the task at hand, on the lives depending on her. They made it through. The fourth stage was absolute darkness. Not just the absence of light, but the absence of everything. No stars, no matter, no energy of any kind. Just pure, perfect nothing. In that nothing, Kira heard a voice. Not the voice of the architects, something older, something that had existed before the universe began. "Who are you?" the voice asked. "I am Kira Vance," she replied, speaking into the void. "Navigator of the wandering star. That is what you do. It is not who you are." Kira thought about the question. Who was she, really? A miner's daughter? A rejected applicant? A self-taught navigator? a friend, a crew member, a dreamer.
I am someone who refuses to give up, she said finally.
Someone who believes that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go.
Someone who found a family among people the universe rejected, and learned that rejection is just the beginning of the story. The voice was silent for a long moment. Then, it spoke again, and there was something like approval in its tone.
That is a good answer. Not all who take the path find it. Most are consumed by the darkness, unable to remember who they are when everything else is taken away.
But, you, Kira Vance, you know yourself. You carry your truth within you.
The darkness faded, and light returned.
Before them lay the final stage of the path. It was a narrow passage between two impossibilities, a black hole on one side and a star being born on the other. The gravitational forces were beyond measurement. The radiation would have killed unshielded humans instantly. The passage itself was barely wider than the ship.
We can't make it through there, Elena said, her voice flat with despair. It's too narrow. The forces are too strong. There's no way.
Kira looked at the passage, and, for the first time since they had entered the gateway, she smiled.
Yes, there is. But, I need everyone to trust me completely.
No hesitation, no questions, no second guessing.
Can you do that?
The crew looked at each other. They had followed her this far, through impossible challenges and unimaginable dangers. They had seen her do things that should not have been possible. And, in their eyes, Kara saw not doubt but faith.
We trust you, Marcus said, speaking for all of them. Do what you need to do. Kara took a deep breath and began the final approach.
The ship shook as the gravitational forces took hold, pulling and pushing in different directions. The hull screamed in protest.
Warning lights flashed across every console. But Kara's hands never wavered.
She didn't try to fight the forces. Instead, she used them, letting the black hole's pull accelerate them while using the newborn star's energy to shield them from the worst of the radiation. It was like threading a needle at the speed of light, with cosmic powers trying to tear them apart at every moment. The passage narrowed further.
Metal groaned. Systems failed. In the engine room, Elena worked frantically to keep power flowing.
On the bridge, Tomas prayed to gods he had never believed in. Jin's massive hands gripped his console so hard the metal bent. Dr. Tanaka closed her eyes and thought of all the good she might still do if they survived. And Marcus watched Kira, the young woman he had found in the rain, the daughter he had chosen, as she faced the greatest challenge any human had ever known. The ship burst through the passage and emerged into open space. Before them lay a world unlike any they had ever seen. It was not a planet in the conventional sense, but a constructed sphere, perfectly smooth and gleaming with the light of 1,000 suns. Around it orbited rings of technology so advanced they looked like magic, mechanisms that served purposes humans could only guess at. Welcome, Kira Vance of humanity, the voice of the architects spoke, filling the ship. You have completed the path. You are the first of your kind to do so. You have earned the knowledge of the architects. The crew gathered on the bridge, staring at the artificial world in wonder. They had done it. They had actually done it.
What happens now? Kira asked. Now, you learn.
And, through you, your species learns. The knowledge of the architects is vast, accumulated over millions of years, the combined wisdom of 1,000 civilizations that walked the path before you. It is the key to transforming your species from children into adults, from dreamers into builders, from a scattered people into a united force for good in the cosmos. A beam of light descended from the artificial world and enveloped the wandering star. Information began to flow, not in words or images but in pure understanding, concepts and ideas and truths that expanded the mind and opened new possibilities. Kira felt the knowledge entering her, changing her, making her more than she had been. She saw new technologies that would cure diseases and extend life. She saw energy sources that would end poverty and want. She saw the means to travel between galaxies in hours instead of centuries. She saw the truth of the universe, beautiful and terrifying and magnificent. But she also saw the responsibility that came with the knowledge. The architects had not created the path as a game or a test. They had created it as a filter, ensuring that only species wise enough and brave enough to navigate its challenges would receive the knowledge. In the wrong hands, the knowledge could destroy as easily as it could create. Why me? Kira asked, overwhelmed by what she was experiencing. Why was I able to do what others couldn't? Because you were not limited by what others told you was possible. The academy that rejected you taught its students to navigate by rules and formulas. You taught yourself to navigate by instinct and feeling. The path cannot be traveled by those who follow rules. It can only be traveled by those who write their own. The irony was not lost on Kira. The very things that had disqualified her from the academy were the things that had qualified her for the path. Her lack of formal training, her unorthodox methods, her refusal to accept limitations, all of it had prepared her for this moment. The download of knowledge took hours. When it was complete, the crew of the Wandering Star sat in exhausted silence, trying to process everything they had learned. Their minds had been expanded beyond anything they had imagined possible. They were no longer the same people who had entered the gateway. You must return to your people now, the architects said. Share what you have learned. Use it wisely. We will be watching. The return journey through the path was far easier than the original passage. The knowledge Kira had received included understanding of the route, and what had been chaos before was now clear and navigable. They emerged from the gateway to find the human fleet still waiting, though for them only days had passed while weeks had elapsed on the other side. The reception was overwhelming. Admiral Vasquez embraced Kira like a daughter, tears streaming down her face. The scientists clamored for access to the knowledge. The military officers who had doubted her stood in ashamed silence. Messages of congratulation poured in from every human world. But the real work was just beginning. The knowledge of the architects was not something that could be simply handed over and forgotten. It needed to be carefully shared, responsibly implemented, used to help rather than harm. Kira became the center of an effort that would transform human civilization over the following decades. She established the Vance Institute, a research organization dedicated to studying and implementing the architect's knowledge. Unlike the academy that had rejected her, the institute was open to anyone with talent and drive, regardless of their background. Students came from mining colonies and wealthy core worlds alike, united by a desire to learn and grow. The technologies were released gradually, each one carefully tested and refined before being made available. Medical advances came first, treatments that extended life and eliminated diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Energy technologies followed, providing clean and unlimited power to every world. Transportation improvements made trade and travel easier, bringing the scattered human colonies closer together. But perhaps the most important change was in attitudes. The story of Kira Vance, the rejected applicant who had saved humanity and changed the universe, became a symbol of what was possible when institutions learned to look beyond credentials and circumstances. The academy reformed its policies, opening its doors to students from all backgrounds. Other institutions followed. A new generation grew up believing that limitations were meant to be overcome, not accepted. Kira never sought personal glory. She remained aboard the Wandering Star, traveling the spaceways with her crew, exploring new regions of space, seeking out other civilizations that might benefit from contact with humanity. She became an ambassador, a teacher, a legend. The crew aged together, their bonds growing stronger with each passing year. Elena eventually retired to run a prosthetics research facility, building better mechanical limbs for those who needed them. Tomas found the peaceful family life he had glimpsed in the time distortion, settling on a green world with a wife and children who called him a hero. Jean found peace at last, his secret pain healed by time and the love of his chosen family. Dr. Tanaka received the recognition she deserved, her research saving millions of lives across the galaxy. And Marcus, the old captain who had seen something in a girl standing in the rain, lived long enough to see Kira become everything he had believed she could be. On his deathbed, surrounded by the family he had chosen, he spoke his last words to her. "I was never wrong about you," he said, smiling the same warm smile he had given her so many years before.
Not even for a moment.
Kira held his hand as he passed, and the tears she shed were of gratitude as much as grief. Without him, she would have spent her life in the mines. Without him, humanity would never have received the gift of the architects. Without him, she would never have known what it meant to have a father who truly believed in her. The years turned into decades, and the decades turned into centuries. Through the life extension technologies of the architects, Kira lived far longer than any human before her. She saw civilizations rise and fall. She watched humanity spread to new galaxies, making contact with species that had seemed impossibly distant. She became a figure of legend, her name spoken with reverence by children who had never known a universe without the knowledge she had brought. But she never forgot where she came from. Every year, she returned to Vareth 7, to the mining colony where she had been born. She stood in the rain outside the communications hub, remembering the girl who had crumpled a rejection letter and thrown it in the mud. She visited the graves of her parents, telling them about the wonders she had seen and the adventures she had lived. And every year, she sought out a young person who reminded her of herself. Someone with fire in their eyes and dreams in their heart. Someone who had been told they couldn't, they shouldn't, they wouldn't. She would sit with them, share her story, and make them an offer. "I'm going to the stars," she would say. "Would you like to come with me?" The Academy had rejected Kira Vance. But history had embraced her. Her name was taught in schools across 1,000 worlds. Her image stood in the halls of institutions that would never again reject a student for being born in the wrong place. Her legacy was measured not in titles or credentials but in the lives she had touched and the futures she had opened. She was never accepted into the Academy. And yet her name became a legend. In the end, that was all that mattered. Many centuries after Kira's journey through the path, when she had finally chosen to let go and join her crew in whatever came after, the architects sent a message to humanity. It arrived on every world simultaneously, a final farewell from the beings who had changed the course of human history. We watched Kira Vance from the moment she entered the gateway. We knew, even then, that she was different. Most who attempt the path do so out of arrogance or ambition. They believe they deserve the knowledge of the architects. She did not believe she deserved anything. She simply refused to accept that she didn't. That is the quality we have sought for millions of years. Not brilliance, though she had that. Not courage, though she had that too. But something rarer, something precious. The conviction that one's circumstances do not define one's destiny. The faith that effort matters, that growth is possible, that the universe rewards those who never stop trying. Kira Vance taught us something we had not learned in all our endless existence. She showed us that the greatest civilizations are not those with the most knowledge or the most power. They are those that find ways to nurture their Kira Vances, to give chances to those who seem least likely to succeed, to look beyond credentials and circumstances to the fire that burns within. We chose well, all those years ago, when we invited her to walk the path. And humanity chose well when they sent her to answer our invitation. May you continue to choose well in the ages to come. May you always find room for those who refuse to give up. And may Kira Vance's story remind you, forever, of what is possible when you believe in those who have not yet learned to believe in themselves. The message became part of the founding documents of every human institution. It was carved into monuments and taught to children. It remained, through all the ages that followed, a reminder of a simple truth. The universe doesn't care about your credentials. It cares about your character. It doesn't care about your circumstances. It cares about your choices. It doesn't care about where you started. It only cares about how far you're willing to go. Kira Vance went all the way. And, in doing so, she opened the door for everyone who came after. Her legend would endure as long as humans looked up at the stars and dared to dream.